All right. Welcome, everybody, to our final session here of day two of Revolt. Very exciting to introduce Patrick Purvis and Brandon Smith, and they will be talking about vibe coding. I think that's a term that we are all, getting to hear a lot more. How to build versus buy, and how that decision has dramatically changed for RevOps overnight. Little background, Patrick is currently VP of Sales and Marketing over at Replit. And prior to that stint, he spent almost 10 years in the data space, both at ZoomInfo and at Discover.org. And then Brandon Smith has been nearly 7 years at CodaPath. So both of which have strong experience in this particular space around RevOps and automation. So with that, and without further ado, I'll turn it over to Patrick and Brandon. Welcome.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Manuel. We're excited to be here and speaking with all of you. What we wanted to talk about today is this idea that for decades, software creation has really been limited to the purview of developers and engineers. If you had a problem that needed a software solution, you really only had three options. You could wait months for engineering resources. You could pay thousands for a SaaS tool that gets you only 80% of the way there, has a lot of additional features that you might not need, half the seats sort of sit on the shelf, or you could build it manually. But something has shifted pretty dramatically in the last year, where now for the first time, the people closest to the problems, the people like Brandon and RevOps and AI strategy at CodaPath here, can solve those problems themselves by creating software entirely in natural language, not needing to learn to code at all. And this isn't theoretical. We're seeing this across our customer base here at Replit, and Brandon's putting this into practice at CodaPath and one of our most advanced power users. So we're excited to have him share what he's been building here today. Before we kind of jump into the meat of things, Brandon, let me start with some quick context and explain for anyone in the audience who doesn't know the phrase vibe coding yet, sort of what is vibe coding. The phrase originated back in March when Andre Karpathy of OpenAI and Tesla fame tweeted out, there's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give into the vibes, you embrace exponentials, and you forget that code even exists. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, copy paste stuff, and it mostly works. And this tweet he sent really went kind of viral, and thus the phrase vibe coding was born. And for now, at least, love it or hate it, it seems like it's going to stick. So we're embracing it here at Replit. Now, Andre's pretty technical, and he was likely talking about using Cursor and Claude Code and these other more technical AI coding tools that are built for engineers. But I would say today that the phrase largely applies to tools that are built for non-technical folks. So Brandon, first question for you. I'm curious, how do you think about vibe coding? What does it mean to you to vibe code?
Yeah, so vibe coding for me is kind of along those lines. to then kind of give some intelligent suggestions for what levers we can potentially pull in order to hit our financial plan for 2026. And so plugged in that prompt, plugged in some of those different credentials into a vibe coding tool, and within about an hour or so, with some prompting back and forth, have a live web app that we're able to collaborate amongst each other and kind of see what our 2026 could end up looking like.
That's awesome. So this is a 2026 budgeting tool. You're using it cross-departmentally to plan for next year with finance, and presumably you've integrated it to some of your systems of record, your CRM, maybe Gong, and you've also layered on AI on top of that to help you with the analysis and help you with the planning.
Yeah, exactly. So we're bringing it, and you don't even necessarily have to bring in like a Salesforce connection in any way. Like if you want to just start with, okay, this is the starting point for where I am at the end of 2025, and this is where I want to be, and this is generally speaking the averages over the last year. You can definitely just start with those variables and not necessarily have to bring in like a Salesforce integration, because that's when things can start to balloon in terms of scope and get a little bit hectic to manage in a tool like this.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Now, presumably there's dozens of point solutions that you could have purchased to help you with this planning process and take it out of Excel. Is there anything you find particularly sort of unique about the way that you built the app that you think you would have been unlikely to find in a point solution? In other words, because you were able to tailor make this for QuotaPath, was there a workflow in there or some aspect of it that it truly uniquely serves your needs?
Yeah, so it's funny, when I shared this app with our CEO, he was like, oh, this looks like XYZ app. So there's definitely tools out there that are on the market that fit this need. There might be more bells and whistles to those that's where they kind of fill the market and make sense for some folks. But our scenario was pretty straightforward. I will say the custom component that we were able to add specific to us was being able to like offer a system prompt to our like open API, our ChatGPT like wrapper as a part of it. And so giving it the context of the QuotaPath business, how we tend to operate, the different roles that we have, the current team size, all of that type of stuff was already baked into the system prompt. And then the suggestions that the AI component ended up spitting out were very custom to the knowledge that we fed into it originally. Like I said, you could probably find a tool on the market that does exactly this. The challenge with that is, one, it takes a little bit longer to like get onboarded and do all these different things. And then two, it just isn't, I mean, there's definitely a satisfaction to like building it yourself that like is an instant dopamine hit for sure.
Yeah, and ultimately, I mean, you're the domain expert in this at QuotaPath, right? And so for that system prompt that you were able to build into your version of this application, you're probably able to bring a lot of context that, you know, an outside party just wouldn't know. You know your stages, your entry and exit criteria to those different stages in your pipeline. You know how the commission plans work at QuotaPath specifically, and all of that additional context can really inform this app that you've made, but probably no one else at the company or outside the company would be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's, I feel like, where the unique role that RevOps kind of has of understanding the business and all of its different like levels, both from a marketing standpoint, sales standpoint, post-sales standpoint. That's the unique seat that RevOps sits in. And I think that's where, I mean, that's why like AI became part of my title at the beginning of this year, is because I have one, the domain expertise at QuotaPath. I've been here for about 6.5 years and understand what the business is trying to do and where it's going. Then on top of that, I understand the systems that end up kind of coming together, and then where AI can potentially fill certain gaps that we have along the way.
Yeah, makes sense. Before we move on to kind of bigger picture discussion here, can you give us one more example of anything else you built?
Yeah, so this was actually my first thing that I built in Replit. This was a problem that we were facing for quite some time, and I'll actually take a step back, because one thing that I like to stay grounded in my role is building solutions for problems that exist, rather than trying to apply a solution to literally anything in the organization. And so staying rooted in a problem and then trying to find a solution to that problem is the best application of AI that I've found so far. And so one problem that we faced as an organization was we had all of these shared Slack channels across the organization, both on the sales side of things, post-sale side of things. And those end up being kind of a black hole in terms of the data that lives in those Slack channels. That Slack channel information doesn't make its way back into Salesforce at all, doesn't make its way back into Gong at all. And so there's no real understanding of what's actually happening with those customers or those prospects, because it's not being logged back into Salesforce or Gong.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I built was a Slack app. And I believe the vibe coding tool that I was using ended up giving me instructions for how to actually build the Slack app, which was incredibly helpful as well. So I built a Slack app that ends up being in every channel that we have that's external facing, gets invited to those channels. And you can actually create those channels with the Slack app as well. And what it's doing is it's taking a look at what's happening in a given day and summarizing that with another Open API key or OpenAI API key, and summarizing the conversation that's happening in that day and creating a task in Salesforce and an engagement in Gong. And then what that ends up doing is it creates a kind of an audit layer where we're able to see those tasks are happening. We could see the little engagement bubble in Gong and see that we're engaging with those customers still, and there's not a lack of engagement. So when a rep forecasts a deal to be closed, we can see that there's engagement on it and it's not going dark. And it's overall been super beneficial for the organization, because what we didn't have before, we now have in Salesforce and Gong. And honestly, there's not a lot on the market that I've seen that fills this problem. And that's what led me to go and build this with the vibe coding app.
Yeah, super cool. And I think that's a problem all RevOps leaders can relate to, right? There are certain channels that end up being kind of a black hole where you can't capture the activity, and then you lack that visibility in CRM, and it impacts your ability to forecast accurately and whatnot. Really,
100%.
really cool that you were able to just solve that problem on your own by vibe coding a Slack automation.
Yeah, it's funny. Like that one thing that's always interesting to see about like stuff that gets created from these vibe coding apps is people end up selling like subscriptions to them. Like I know Replit has a Stripe integration, for example, and I've had people like come to me and be like, "Oh, I want to buy this app," and I kind of just tell them, I have a full-time job. Like I can't sell this app and then manage it and do all this stuff alongside of the way. But it's funny to like see how a lot of these apps can end up leading to entrepreneurship and like startups, which is it's a really cool evolution.
Yeah, we see a lot of that kind of activity on Replit as well, and you know, at least you've got a nice fallback plan if you ever.
Yeah, there we go.
But your ability to build these tools, I think, brings up kind of a nice key question, which is, you know, we talked, I think, a week ago as we were preparing for this about how AI is kind of riding this maturity curve. Replit launched the very first vibe coding agent little over a year ago. The first version of it could run for 2 minutes, kind of on its own. Version 2 came out 6 months ago. It could run for 20 minutes. Version 3 came out 1 month ago. It can run for 200 minutes. And so, you know, the pace of AI is pretty dizzying, but you can also think of that in terms of what can you accomplish and how sophisticated are the things that you can build with vibe coding today. A year ago, it was really kind of only good for prototyping, you know, front-end user interfaces. If you were in product, it was a good way to test ideas, get feedback on them, et cetera. Then over the last 6 months, I think we've matured into this phase where you can build these kind of medium sophistication apps that of the likes that you're building, Brandon, but you're probably not yet replacing, you know, Salesforce completely. but maybe we're only 6 to 12 months away from a future where even that is possible if the pace maintains. How do you think about when to build versus buy, given the state of maturity today? And how do you think about the maintenance aspect of this? If something breaks, you don't have engineering there to go fix it.
Yeah, I remember when I first kind of told people about this Slack app that I had created in a roundtable of RevOps folks. The first response was, "Okay, well, how do you maintain that? Like, what happens if it breaks?" And like, that's an absolutely fair question. I think you kind of have to draw a line in the sand where it's what is mission critical versus what is I wouldn't call it trivial, but like it's okay if it's down for a certain period of time. To your point, we're not at the stage yet where we're building full-fledged CRMs that reps need access to at any given time of the day in order to move an opportunity from a certain stage to another stage. But we are at a point where we can build tools that are supplementary, that are kind of point solutions that fill a need. And if they're off for even a day, it's still okay. Like if we don't get activity back from a Slack channel to Salesforce, nothing's going to break. It's going to be annoying, yes, but nothing is going to be on fire. No revenue is damaged as a result. We're missing something, right? And I think that's kind of the delineation that folks have to make when thinking about this build versus buy. And then I think the other component is how custom do you need to make it? Like, yes, from a vibe coding perspective, you can get as custom as you really want. But as you start adding complexity and different integrations, like that's when things start to break down at this point in time. Like QuotaPath's a great example of this. We connect with a bunch of different systems, connect with CRMs, we connect with ERPs, and there's all these different levers that end up happening in order for somebody to earn commissions. And that's just something that like I personally wouldn't want to try to vibe code, because if one of those integration breaks, then you're kind of in trouble with paying, again, a mission critical thing of commissions.
Yeah, this kind of framework around like uptime and then what are you impacting if it goes down, I think is the right lens to think about it through. You don't want to mess with people's pay, so probably don't want to touch commissions, and that kind of thing. But to your point, if your Slacktivity bot goes down for an hour, yeah, you're going to lose out on some visibility on what's happening with your prospects, but it's probably not the end of the world. You can backfill that data later. Right. That makes a lot of sense. So let's move on a little bit. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but you're not a developer. Right. What skills from your RevOps background do you actually think made you better at this than a traditional engineer might be?
Yeah, I think it's understanding the business and understanding like the different levers that can be pulled, and then understanding like the problems that a business faces and our go-to-market teams face. I think engineers are obviously going to be the most dangerous when actually like building, but they still need to have the understanding of what they're building, and being able to at least get to a point where I have something built with the knowledge that I have and the understanding of the problems that our teams face. That can get us like 90%, 95% of the way there in most cases. There's certainly areas where like bringing on an engineer could make sense, and there could even make sense to like vibe code something and then bring on an engineer to like build upon that. That's certainly a scenario that I could see being useful for a lot of these internal tools that we're building, just as like additional support. But yeah, it's the understanding of the business and the problems that the business face, and then what the problems that our teams face. Like I've done interviews with each member of our team, kind of uncovering the problems that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. And like, I don't expect an engineer to do something like that.
Yeah, and ultimately you would have to translate any requirements you have over to the engineers, and inevitably there's going to be some, loss in that translation. And so the software development lifecycle has to have these iterations where you're kind of going back and forth to get it dialed in because of that loss in communication. I think the beauty of vibe coding is its ability to unlock the ability for the people who, again, understand the system best, because you know the whole system of your go-to-market org and how all the different pieces fit together, from the comp plan to the people to the technology, and then immediately go solve those issues yourself without needing to have that translation layer there to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So where do you think then this is all heading? What is the sort of future and of RevOps work look like? How do you think it changes the nature of RevOps work? Are we, looking at a future where are salespeople becoming builders? Are you hiring more or less people to do this kind of work with these additional powers in the future? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to hope that RevOps will be around for the foreseeable future. That's my hope, and I do feel like that is the case, especially with the what we've kind of talked about, right? Of having the domain knowledge and understanding the business at greater lengths. On top of that, I would say there's definitely a consideration. The whole session that we're on right now is talking about build versus buy. That is actually a realistic thing to be thinking about now. And I made a post on my LinkedIn probably about 6 months ago on this topic of like, now I can actually think about building something myself without bringing in a contractor, an engineer, an agency. I can build these custom apps myself. And I think that's where we'll continue to go over time. What that looks like for SaaS, I don't really know. I think that there still will be a need for these types of things, like the gaps that we've talked about today. But yeah, there's definitely a consideration now that's hasn't been the same, or hasn't been like it's been in the past. And I think it's just going to continue to grow on these vibe coding apps.
Yeah, we totally agree. I think, one interesting thing is I think we're moving from a world of sort of sales and operations separately to sales and builders. RevOps leaders can take more and more of this on their own. Number one. Number two, I think there's a lot of discussion in the engineering world about the 10x engineer, the 100x engineer, and how AI is going to unlock that. I think we'll see that within RevOps as well. And ultimately, I think that the most valuable RevOps professionals are going to be the people who can spot those inefficiencies, design the solutions, build them without needing to wait on anyone else.
Totally. So, there used to be this concept of like builders and sellers, right? And now that gap has been bridged to a degree where like sellers can become builders in a lot easier of a way. And like even me, as I would probably fit more into the builder category, I can even build more with these types of tools.
Totally. 100%. Well, that's probably a good note to end on, and we can open it up for Q&A. But for anyone in the audience who's interested, we're going to I'm pasting into the chat a code to sign up for Replit and get a free month on our core plan. Feel free to check that out if that sounds interesting, and otherwise happy to take questions here from the audience.
Awesome. I love the code. I think that's really valuable. So we did get a few questions along the way, and I pulled them out. So the first one came from Patrick, and I will butcher his last name, so I'll just call him by his first name. When do you feel vibe coding peaks? I found after the scaffolding phase, then you need to get your hands dirty, in his opinion. So I guess, Brandon, that's probably one for you.
Yeah, I think both of us could probably take this. Patrick probably has a unique view on this as well, given his where he works. But from my perspective, I do think that there are some limitations, right? Like and this is one interesting thing about QuotaPath as an organization is we're actually encouraging folks to vibe code. And we have like sessions on Fridays where we're vibe coding as an organization. We're coming up with problems that our customers face, that we face internally, and vibe coding solutions for those. my suggestion for everyone in these is like to start simple and then build upon that as much as you can. Because like a lot of these vibe coding apps can start to get to a point where there's a lot of like different paths that it can go down, and those paths end up leading to dead links. And so starting simple and then building upon it, I feel like is where I've seen the most amount of success. But yeah, I think there certainly are some gaps. And Patrick, I'm sure y'all are like thinking about those gaps and filling those for sure.
Yeah, I think about a few things here. Again, kind of going back to that AI maturity curve, you can think of it as like, step one of it's almost like a software complexity curve, and how far can you get along that curve using vibe coding. Step one is prototyping. Step two might be super lightweight applications like a ROI calculator or a commission calculator, that kind of thing. Step two is these more medium weight applications and automations, the type that Brandon's building. And then eventually we'll get to, fully complex, arbitrarily complex software and automations and replacing Salesforce. In those, when you're in these intermediate periods where it's like today, you can almost get all the way to complex production software. A lot of times you can get it to 90%. And then for that last mile, you want to bring in the human and get your hands dirty. And that might look like taking the code from your vibe coding platform, whether that's Replit or one of the others, push it to GitHub, bring your engineering team in to help you kind of harden that and get it into production. But in other cases, you can go straight to production on your own. You can host it on Replit, for example. And I'm trying to make this not too much of a sales pitch for Replit, but the space is also evolving really, really rapidly. Within the last few weeks, we launched data connectors where you can now OAuth into Salesforce, into HubSpot, into Jira and Linear, and your Google Calendar and your Google Sheets and all these other tools, such that, again, as a non-technical user, you don't even need to go get an API key. You can just build apps that connect to the tools that you use and build automations that connect to the tools that you use. Right now, again, entirely in natural language. So the space evolves so quickly. I just encourage everyone to keep an eye on it, keep experimenting. There is definitely a skill here. I also don't mean to pretend that it's always super easy. We've seen people, I said no one's going to replace CRM. That's going to be at a larger SaaS company. We actually have a case study on our website of a small property management company that did cancel their Salesforce contract and rolled their own CRM. Now, obviously, the CRM they vibe coded is going to be less sophisticated than Salesforce, but that's okay for them because they don't need all of this sophistication. They're saving $100,000 a year in SaaS spend. But building that CRM took the CEO about a dozen hours of working with the agent, prompting it, encountering bugs, feeding back to the agent, hey, here's a bug. I'm getting some error code. It's gibberish to me, but telling the agent that, that error code is happening. And then the agent works on it and fixes that. And then you find another bug. So it takes some persistence, some grit. It takes systems thinking. There's definitely a skill here that you can learn. But the more that you do it, the farther you'll get. And then you'll be hard pressed to even keep up with the field and the pace of AI development.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the entire company is currently being built on vibe coded products too. So it'll be really interesting to see how that evolves. But to your point, I think there will definitely be a need for a human in the loop, and you sort of do the fine tuning and the fact checking. I think that's still necessary. So great. We got another question, and maybe this is a self-evident one, but we'll see. This is also for Brandon. What platform did you use to vibe code the planning tool that you were talking about? Was it Replit?
Yeah, I used Replit. So yeah, I've used Replit for just over 6 months at this point, and all of the examples that I've given so far have been built on Replit. So.
Got it. All right. Well, that was a question from Elsa. So Elsa, there you go. And you have a way to sign up for Replit with the coupon code here. So great stuff. The next question, and perhaps this may be a separate thing, but maybe Brandon, if you're open to it, can you give a demo of the planning tool that you did? I'm assuming maybe there's some proprietary information there, so it might be difficult, but maybe there are some generic use that you can share. Yeah.
There are it is very much proprietary, just given the like system prompt added and some of the data that's plugged in there. But I will say, if like I'm happy if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to share what that like original system prompt was, and then you can kind of tweak it. System prompt to build the app, not system prompt that has our information in it, and you can kind of build it yourself. And I'm happy to give some screenshots as well that scrub any sort of private data for us as well.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, Vinay, I know you had asked that question. If you want to directly connect with Brandon via LinkedIn, sounds like he's very open to that.
And maybe we can talk Brandon into letting us publish a remixed version of that app where we will have our agent just populate it with dummy data. And so there's nothing sensitive left in there. And then one cool thing is you can have these public apps that you can let anyone kind of fork and remix so they can use it themselves. And we've got a gallery on our website. So maybe we'll be able to talk Brandon.
Great. Well, that's actually a great segue into the last question that had come in, and that's around publishing some of these apps. I presume this was specific to the Slack app that you had described, Brandon, but could you put them out on Hugging Face or Lovable or one of these other sites and just like make them available, or I guess what's preventing you from doing something like that?
Yeah, you definitely could. There are like API keys and scopes that you need to like tweak with like the Slack app itself is its own Slack app. So you would have to build the Slack app with Slack and then offer its like own API scopes and do all that type of stuff. And then that's when the Slacktivity app would work, because it's like combining with that existing app built on Slack. So yeah, there's certainly ways that it could definitely be shareable. Again, I'm happy to connect with anybody and kind of like walk them through my approach. I mean, that's the very interesting thing about the world that we live in now is anybody can build with these vibe coding tools. And so like you can just have different versions of these vibe coding tools that other people build, which is actually really interesting. And then as Patrick said, there's like templates that are offered and can be remixed in certain ways.
Yeah, for sure. It's a bit of a Spider-Man theme, though. With great power comes great responsibility when you put these things out there. So
exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Those were all the questions that had come in the chat that obviously made sense to bring up here. If anybody has any other questions, now is the time to ask them. You can also raise your hand and we can put you on as a temporary speaker if you want to ask your question in a verbal way. But yeah, we'll hang out for another minute or so here, and then we'll wrap it up if there are no other questions that come in. I guess maybe I have a question to wrap it up if nothing else comes in. Brandon, what's the next vibe coding project you think you'll tackle?
Oh, that's a good question. Like I said, we as an organization meet weekly and kind of talk about these different problems that we're wanting to build like custom apps for. So one that I know that I'm going to probably be tweaking is an app that we already have built, but we need to make some adjustments. It actually came as a request from like one of our top integration partners to leverage this tool as well potentially, but it's a dummy data creator. So it takes in different variables and like allows us to like create a demoable experience in QuotaPath based on different variables that the customer might have. So if we know their deal sizes typically are from 15K to 50K, we can do that. We can do like a normal distribution curve across the data, and then take all of that information, export it, and potentially not even export it. We could just directly pipe it in using QuotaPath's Deal Create API. So there's a lot of different things that I think we can build upon. So I think that's the approach that I'm probably going to take is building upon some of these apps that I've built over time and make them even more powerful.
Got it. Very, very interesting. So it's almost like you're building a demo tool set for your own app.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it would generate demo data and make it very custom to the customers that we are demoing to.
We see this a lot in our customer base as well, where Replit is being used in the pre-sales motion to showcase the power of our customer's solution, but how it can be customized to their customers' needs. So if the Plaid team working with their APIs and SDKs, I can highlight to one of our customers how they could leverage that in their environments using vibe coding.
We did get one more question here from Vinay, and this I think pertains to that planning app that you were talking about at the beginning. Yeah. That typically needs a lot of math. Is that something that you handle inside of Replit directly, or do you use a separate backend for that?
Yeah, so I think Replit handled most of it. I did give it context with some like Excel spreadsheets that we've used in the past, and gave the prompt that built like the overall prompt for Replit some context there. So Replit handled most of the calculations itself, but it's giving it the context of, okay, this is how we calculate things. And really, honestly, it was pretty lightweight. Like, we were looking at a handful of levers that we're pulling. It's the new business side of things. It's churn and renewals. It's upsells. Then it's some ratios here and there of headcount planning and all that kind of stuff. So there wasn't a ton of like quant that was happening in those, but we were able to like embed that in the original prompt itself.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've even personally done similar things. A lot of these tools can handle pretty extensive math these days. Interestingly enough. So, in fact, they can do it better than Excel. At least that's what I've found. So, awesome. All right. Well, I think that is everything for the questions that have come in. Brandon, Patrick, really appreciate the time and the discussion today. Thank you very much for coming on here. And this was an excellent session. With that, thank you, everybody. And we'll be back for another day tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks y'all. Take care.
Bye.
Take care.